Today, the first time in 2.5 years, we are expanding our product strategy. And it's not a portable. It is a new desktop machine. What is it? We are combining the power of the Power Mac G4, the awesome power of this machine, with the desktop elegance, the silence, and the miniaturization that we learned from doing the iMacs to make a whole new class of machine.
It's funny that Apple's new Mac Studio doesn't have any sort of pro branding on it, and maybe that's on purpose, because the Mac Studio is a computer that is now actually targeted at what I think was previously a very underserved market in Apple's lineup these past few years. The users that sit in the middle. They're not quite buying the top-end gear of what we would call true professional users, where the idea of spending $1,000 on a stand or $800 on beautifully crafted Mac wheels isn't completely insane. Which of course it is. And they aren't targeting the consumer where you might pick your next computer based on its color or how thin and light it is or how easy it is to use, where the idea of plugging devices into your computer is becoming more alien, and while performance is great, it's performance that doesn't slow you down, not with rendering out video, but with performance of scrolling through social media feeds or just having a bunch of browser tabs open. Now, Apple is targeting a set of users who really don't have a great single defining term, because there are so many different names for these types of users. You can call them mid-grade users, or something like creators or creative professionals, jobs that entail a large swath of way too many people to categorize in a single sentence. Artists, photographers, video editors, musicians, 3D modelers, these mid-grade users or enthusiasts, people who sit between the consumer and the truly high-end pro audience. Because the Mac Studio targets such a wide audience, it has to be different than past iterations of Apple computers. Computers that thrived for some, but very much neglected others. The Mac Studio, as I sit here today, is one of the most versatile Macs that I have ever used. But why is that? What is it about this 6-pound box of a computer that makes me so enthralled with it? Well, on its surface, the Mac Studio is just a desktop Mac. However, it's so much smaller than what you would be buying on any Windows equivalent PC tower. It's able to sit on your desk, right under your monitor, taking up as little space as possible. It's meant to be seen and not tucked away under your desk or some inaccessible corner. And that's downright to the design, with accessible ports. And as a video editor who primarily uses cameras that shoot on SD cards, I cannot tell you how overjoyed that I am that an SD card slot is on this computer, so I can easily insert it and start offloading footage without any sort of dongles or docks. Even better is that it's right on the front of the computer, which, if you are a traditional Mac user, you know that even Macs with SD card slots would usually have them placed on the rear of the computer, making them awkward to access as you kind of shuffled around the computer without really looking at it, and then you would have to kind of feel around and then fit your SD card into it. No more on the Mac Studio. It is right there on the front, always and easily accessible to you. Even the two adorning USB-C ports that sit directly next to the SD card slot are so practical for quick use. These are the ports that you would use for quickly connecting accessories. So maybe you want to connect your phone and charge it up while you're at work, or maybe you want to plug in your security key, or an external drive, or anything that you need plugged into your computer momentarily. It's just a great user experience, and it means you don't have to fuss with the rear port selection as much, letting those be static ports that you don't change out too frequently. And there's plenty on the back. 4 full-speed Thunderbolt ports for super fast storage or connecting Thunderbolt external displays, a 10 gigabit Ethernet port for really fast networking, an HDMI port, a headphone jack, and even 2 USB-A ports. And while there's no inward expandability of the Mac Studio, at least not confirmed, and highly inaccessible to users even if it is, the concept of expandability outside of the desktop is something that works. And it's actually a philosophy that goes back to the Trashcan Mac Pro. Now, on that machine, it was a failure because it was trying to be 2 computers at once. A mid-grade computer, much like the Mac Studio, and then a true high-end Pro computer. Because it had even more roles to fill than the Mac Studio, it made for a poor value because of its higher starting price. And for the highest end user, where money is no issue, it couldn't deliver on true expandability and true performance. Here in the Mac Studio at $2,000, it feels right. Expanding the computer through drives, docks, audio interfaces, displays, this Mac should have enough connections for demanding users with bandwidth to spare. It's a great design for the audience it's for. It does the job in the smallest footprint possible while not sacrificing on performance. And that performance is great, especially at the base model, where I think most of those mid-range users will get the most value out of this machine. My model is the exact base model, $2,000 for the M1 Max chip with 32 gigabytes of memory and a 512 gigabyte drive. Now, in my last video, I covered all the benchmarks, so if you want to learn more about that, make sure you check that out there. But I kind of want to talk about my real-world performance of what I do with this device, and it really isn't a surprise. I've already seen what this machine is capable, basically already on my MacBook Pro, because that already has the M1 Max chip. So everything I basically said about the MacBook Pro then applies to the Mac Studio now. So any M1 machine is super fast and quick and efficient at flying through basic applications. So I'm talking about web browsing, listening to music, email, Keynote, whatever basic applications you're using. They open fast. The Studio is just as snappy as other M1 Macs. But again, that's every M1 machine. Users for the Studio are going to be doing more performative tasks, and at least for me, that usually deals with video editing. And the Mac Studio flies through my usual workflows, and all of my past few videos have been edited on the Mac Studio, and I haven't experienced any slowdowns or long render times. Exports are ridiculously fast for this machine, especially if you deal with ProRes footage, and the video timeline is super smooth. This Mac Studio cuts through Final Cut like a hot knife through butter. And I can say the same for pretty much anything else I use that is demanding on the Mac Studio. Editing videos, photos, my podcasts, this computer just zips through it all. I feel like the best way I can describe this computer, at least for me, is that it does not have creative limits. I do not feel limited in any meaningful way from a performance perspective. And from a connectivity perspective, which I think is what makes the Mac Studio unique among the other Apple Silicon Macs out there right now. At least for the base model without the Ultra chip. The Ultra chip is really what's new with the Mac Studio, so if you're getting the Max model, there's not that much new to report here in terms of performance, but there is kind of something new in the way that you use this computer. And that's because I feel like there's no distractions with it. There's no loud fan noise, the computer's presence is barely there at your desk, and you're just kind of focused at your display. You don't have to worry about if it's a MacBook and if it's connected to the display or docked if you're using it in a portable form factor. The Mac Studio is plugged in, all the peripherals are plugged in usually, and it's ready to go, ready to start work. And the fact that Apple can eke out this much performance out of this much efficiency with Apple Silicon is still really astounding to me. And there's nothing like it in the PC market today. And it's an experience that is truly only found, at least for now, on the Mac. Is there weaknesses with the Mac Studio? Yeah. Its graphics performance for $2,000 isn't the best when you consider your other options with a full-size desktop Windows tower. And macOS in general is just not optimized for gaming. And even worse, Apple Silicon is not optimized for most games. So if you're gonna do some light gaming with macOS, you might be fine. But if you're expecting truly groundbreaking AAA gaming performance, the Mac Studio isn't for you. And honestly, with gaming on the Mac, it kind of never was. So don't expect a miracle here. Also, the internal expandability is also kind of, well, it's non-existent, right? So you need to make sure you get the configuration you need now and one you might need for the future. I think most people, that kind of comes down with storage or memory. If you can get by with 512 gigabytes of storage, great. And because this is a desktop, you can keep external storage plugged in at all times because you're probably not moving your Mac Studio around a lot, but internal storage is always nice. And I think you should really consider how much storage you need, not only for today, but also how much storage you need for the next 5 years of owning this computer. The same goes for memory. It's tied to the chip. If you need 64 gigabytes of memory because you deal with high-intensive applications or have a bunch of browser tabs open, or you want a bunch of high-intensive applications open at once, well, you need to try and make that distinction of how much memory you need for today and also for tomorrow, because I think this Mac Studio, even if it ends up being a little bit overkill for you today, it's a computer that can last for a long time, and it's something that can grow with you as your needs become more demanding. Also, as a Mac, it doesn't really work right out of the box. And what I mean by that is that when you open the Mac Studio box, you just get the Mac Studio. There's no keyboard, there's no mouse, there's no display. It's very different than buying an iMac or a MacBook. You'll need these accessories ready to go when you purchase it, or be prepared to go out and make those decisions on what display you want to use, what mouse you want to use, what keyboard you want to use, and a lot of those costs can start to add up pretty quickly. But let's try and get back to the question at hand. Is the Mac Studio worth it for you? Maybe someone who's a mid-range user, a creative user, or an enthusiast Mac user? Well, I think it depends on if you are able to take advantage of the power it offers. If you need to hook up multiple 5K displays, or you need fast render or compile times, if you work with 4K video, advanced graphics, titles, whatever kind of thing you need to throw at a professional-ish kind of device, then I think this Mac Studio is definitely worth it for its form factor, the amount of ports it has, and the performance you are getting out of this $2,000 machine. Because you're looking at one of the fastest Mac desktops available right now at a reasonable price point that's going to deliver more value, performance per dollar, than something like the equivalent MacBook Pro. If you were to spec out a MacBook Pro with the same specs as the base model Mac Studio, that would be an extra $900. So if you don't need portability and just want to focus on performance, this is where I think that base model Mac Studio really shines. And if that sounds like something you want, then yes, the Mac Studio is for you. All right, hopefully you found the video informative, and if you did, please leave me a like. If you want to see more, including future coverage on the Mac Studio, make sure you're subscribed, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.